James Buchanan Barnes, better known as Bucky or the Winter Soldier, has had a fascinating generation-spanning presence in Marvel Comics and, of course, the MCU. Having gone from Captain America's closest friend during World War II in Captain America: The First Avenger, to Hydra's top assassin in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, to a veteran Avenger by the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bucky has achieved many feats across the MCU's timeline. After Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes is one of the more beloved characters in the MCU canon, despite how little he has appeared in the films compared to a lot of other characters. Obviously, Bucky's main character arc in the MCU revolves around him becoming and eventually trying to break free of the Winter Soldier, a deadly assassin who is basically Hydra's killing machine. But he has come a long way since then, and in the course of 9 MCU films, we have seen a lot of upgrades in the Winter Soldier's character. Still, the most interesting part of Bucky Barnes is his physiology. So, without wasting another moment, let's take a gander in the Winter Soldier's anatomy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You are to be the new fist of Hydra.
How did Hydra create the first Winter Soldier with Bucky Barnes? So it's rather obvious from what is shown of Bucky's backstory that his transformation into the Winter Soldier involved a lot of brainwashing. But what specifically did Hydra do to break him like that? A lot of specific answers to this come from the Wakanda Files, a book released in 2019 that explores a lot of the technological advances seen in the MCU, including old Hydra files collected by Shuri. In the book, it states that the Winter Soldier project was personally overseen by Dr. Armin Zola himself. In January 1945, during a mission to hijack a Hydra train and capture Dr. Zola, Bucky is believed to have been killed in action after having fallen from the train and presumably to his death. But luckily, Bucky survived his fall and was found by Hydra, though he injured his left arm awfully. He was also subsequently turned over to Hydra's Siberian facility, where he was held prisoner. They basically took Bucky after he fell from the train in the first Avenger and essentially nursed him back to health, though they did need to amputate his left arm. They then made him a cybernetic metal prosthetic to replace it, and Shuri believed that they also exposed Bucky to gamma radiation in order to enhance his physique and make him stronger. Not just that, Arnim Zola, who was later freed and recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the SSR under Operation Paperclip, continued his experiments on Bucky Barnes while secretly rebuilding Hydra. It was actually Zola who gave Bucky a new cybernetic arm, while also using mental reprogramming techniques and brainwashing to remake him into a weapon they could control. They were bound to erase his memories and brainwash him in order to turn him into a machine that would do Hydra's bidding. But according to Zola's files, he was very resistant to the brainwashing attempts. The brainwashing consisted of electroconvulsive therapy, followed by certain keywords and phrases that would activate the Winter Soldier programming in his brain and would take a very long time to ever undo. Shuri says that under Hydra's control, Bucky would be in a dreamlike state where he would be unable to refuse orders. Moreover, Hydra would keep him cryogenically frozen for decades and thaw him out only when they needed to eliminate desired targets. So that is how they created the first ever Winter Soldier with Bucky Barnes. One of the Winter Soldier's earliest missions was to assist the Soviet Army in the Korean War, which is also where he met and fought Isaiah Bradley, who was the US's first super soldier. The Winter Soldier was often used to perform assassinations over the years, including that of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. But one of the major other assassinations, in terms of the MCU, that the Winter Soldier committed was the murder of Howard and Maria Stark, Tony Stark's parents. And if you're a true MCU enthusiast, you'll remember that this was a major plot point in Captain America: Civil War. Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, also mentions having a run-in with a Winter Soldier prior to their meeting in the MCU timeline. While on a mission in Iran, she and a nuclear engineer she had been charged with protecting were apparently attacked by the Winter Soldier. Bucky shot Natasha through the stomach, and the engineer was unfortunately killed in the altercation. The Winter Soldier is also shown attempting to assassinate Nick Fury during the events of the Winter Soldier and faces off against Steve Rogers and the Triskelion, which are some of his last acts as an antagonistic character in the MCU. Luckily, Phase 3 into Phase 4 has Bucky Barnes try and shed the weight of his Winter Soldier identity and become more of a hero again. Still, Bucky really struggled with what Hydra did to his mind, and in Civil War we even see him fall back under that control again when Zemo utters his trigger words. By the time the MCU gets to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he seems to have fully broken free of the brainwashing, but how he did so isn't clear at first. Eventually, the show reveals that he was cured during the time he spent recovering in Wakanda. The exact method isn't made explicit, but a reasonable guess is that Shuri developed some sort of de-patterning for his mind that would break the control Hydra had over him. This might have involved some intensive work that may have actually broken him a bit mentally, which was necessary in order to totally remove Hydra's control and rebuild his brain into something that was truly his own once again. The History of Bucky Barnes' cybernetically enhanced prosthetic arm. In the comics, Bucky Barnes' story is slightly different from the Winter Soldier's MCU journey. For instance, it was the Soviet Union who turned him into the Winter Soldier, and Bucky took up the Captain America mantle long before Steve Rogers passed on the torch to Sam Wilson. Sure, the MCU made a few major changes to the Winter Soldier, but his prosthetic arm continues to be one of his signature characteristics. However, as symbolic as the metal arm is, Bucky Barnes' prosthetic has gone through several different changes throughout the decades. As shown by Captain America: The First Avenger, Bucky Barnes' prosthetic arm has its origins in 1945, when Captain America, Bucky, and the Howling Commandos intercept a train containing Arnim Zola. The heroes succeed in fighting off multiple Hydra soldiers, but Captain America and Bucky get caught with a guard down by an armored guard armed with a Tesseract energy-powered weapon, which destroys a wall and leaves Bucky hanging on a rail. Sadly, despite Captain America's attempts to reach Bucky, Bucky was unable to keep holding onto the train as the rail broke, and he plunged hundreds of feet into the freezing cold river below. Now, his team did not know that because of the super soldier serum injected by Arnim Zola at one point, Bucky's enhanced abilities allowed him to survive the fall, albeit with the loss of his left arm. Eventually, Bucky Barnes' flashbacks reveal that Hydra and the Soviet armed forces rescued him as he lay dying after the train incident. Arnim Zola then ordered Hydra's top scientists to begin treating his wounds. Given the damage he suffered from the fall, Bucky's left arm had to be amputated. Of course, Hydra took this opportunity to replace his arm with a state-of-the-art titanium prosthetic, which became his main weapon. Basically, just like how prosthetics work in real life, the nerve endings on his shoulder that come from the brain were connected to wires. They also erased Bucky's memories and reprogrammed his mind in order to force him to follow their commands and turn him into a compliant killing machine called the Winter Soldier. For the next 7 decades, the Winter Soldier became their prime operative and fulfilled every mission that Hydra assigned him, as his enhanced skills and reprogrammed mind made him the perfect assassin. This included the assassination of John F. Kennedy, as well as Howard Stark and his wife, Maria. Moreover, in between missions, the Winter Soldier would be put back into a cryogenic stasis to ensure his longevity. However, he wasn't infallible because during the Korean War, a fellow super soldier named Isaiah Bradley managed to destroy the Winter Soldier's arm and escape unscathed. So, Hydra built another arm for the Winter Soldier right afterward. In fact, it is very much possible that Hydra upgraded and created multiple versions of the prosthetic for Bucky throughout the years. Later, the Winter Soldier uses his classic titanium arm prosthetic to fight Captain America, Nick Fury, Black Widow, and Falcon in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and he uses it again to fight Team Iron Man in Captain America: Civil War. By the end of the conflict, Bucky Barnes tries to rip out Tony Stark's arc reactor from his suit of armor, but in retaliation, Iron Man engages his armor's powerful unibeam, blasting Bucky's metal arm off at the shoulder. As a result, Bucky remains incapacitated for the rest of the battle, but after the events of Captain America: Civil War, Bucky Barnes began to regret his actions as the Winter Soldier. Fortunately for him, Bucky did not need to keep escaping from vengeful enemies or the authorities because T'Challa, aka the Black Panther, agreed to safeguard Bucky in his kingdom. Bucky, in turn, chose to stay in cryogenic sleep in order to prevent himself from hurting more people. Meanwhile, Shuri and her fellow Wakandan scientists investigate how Bucky's mental reprogramming could be reversed. Sometime afterward, Shuri and Io test Bucky by repeating the trigger words that Hydra programmed into his mind. Finally, when Bucky doesn't react to them, they all understand that Bucky's Winter Soldier days are finally over. Bucky's deprogramming arrives just in time for his next battle, as T'Challa presents him with a brand new, all-Vibranium prosthetic arm so he can participate in the battle against Thanos. You might not know this, but the Wakandans also built a detaching function into Bucky's Vibranium arm, which the Dora Milaje are instructed in activating in order to neutralize Bucky Barnes, as shown in the Warriors' fight against Bucky, Sam, and John Walker in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Anyways, Bucky continues to use this version of the arm after Thanos' defeat, and he was last seen using it at the end of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, during his daily activities. But ironically, his arm is featured in the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, where Nebula gifts Bucky's arm to Rocket Raccoon as a Christmas gift. Rocket previously showed interest in the arm in Avengers Infinity War, where he tried to negotiate a price with Bucky. It's unknown whether this arm is in fact Bucky's Vibranium prosthetic, or if Nebula acquired or built a perfect replica just to please Rocket. But according to James Gunn, Nebula might have taken a trip to Earth and tore it off his body because she was feeling so Christmassy. However, this may have been a joke, as the arm does not make an appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Even then, we see that Bucky has regained his Vibranium arm at some point, and even though the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't specify, it was clear that his second Vibranium arm was identical to the one Black Panther gave him, and that he has had it for a significant period of time in his day-to-day life. How powerful is the Winter Soldier's cybernetically enhanced prosthetic arm? Well, I certainly don't think this comes to you as a shock, but Bucky's cybernetic arm is incredibly resistant to physical damage. Early on, the bionic arm proved to be a game-changer in close-quarters combat, as Barnes demonstrated feats of brute strength that normal humans, and even most enhanced individuals, would struggle to replicate. He tore open heavily reinforced shield vehicles with ease, shredded Sam Wilson's Exo-7 Falcon gear mid-flight, and even smashed solid concrete with single punches. These feats show just how dangerous he could be with the added power of the arm supporting his already enhanced physique from the Super Soldier Serum. In direct confrontations, especially when he wasn't holding back, Bucky's strength allowed him to overpower even Captain America. A clear example of this came during the intense escape scene from the Joint Counter-Terrorist Center, because despite Steve Rogers using both hands and straining to contain him, Barnes managed to push through, showing how the arm amplified his combat abilities beyond even Steve's. But the arm, for all its brute strength, wasn't without limitations. During the events of Captain America's Civil War, the arm's drawbacks became more apparent. One such moment was during his encounter with Spider-Man. Though Barnes tried to land a powerful blow, Peter Parker not only stopped the punch, but casually remarked on the arm's coolness as he bent it back with minimal effort. Apart from that, Black Panther also proved to be quite a match for the Winter Soldier, as he was able to withstand and counter Bucky's attacks. T'Challa's Vibranium suit absorbed much of the impact from the bionic arm that allowed him to press an advantage, especially in situations where speed and precision mattered more than raw force. And then there was Tony Stark. During the final showdown in Civil War, Iron Man's Mark 46 suit easily outclassed Barnes' arm in both technology and strength. When Stark focused his energy, a single blast from his unibeam was enough to completely destroy the Winter Soldier's titanium arm. It was certainly a sobering moment for us, as it made clear that while the bionic arm was powerful, it wasn't indestructible. But after the destruction of his original arm, Bucky received a major upgrade when King T'Challa gifted him a new arm made entirely of Vibranium, after giving it increased durability and the added advantage of being vibration absorbent. This new arm could take far more punishment and showed greater resilience in combat, including the ability to block gunfire point blank without damage. However, even this arm had a failsafe, as Wakanda's elite warriors had been given a secret way to disable the arm remotely. With a precise combination of pressure points, Io was able to detach the arm during a brief skirmish, thus revealing that Wakanda had built-in safeguards in case Bucky's programming ever resurfaced. Overall, the Winter Soldier's bionic arm, both the original and the Vibranium version, has truly been a defining part of his identity. It symbolizes both the trauma of his past and the strength he's reclaimed. While it has some clear limitations, it still continues to be one of the most iconic and powerful weapons in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How powerful is the Winter Soldier? As you know, Barnes was one of the recipients of Hydra's Super Soldier Serum because of Arnim Zola's experiments. While there were no apparent effects at the time of his rescue by Steve Rogers, the changes the serum caused in Barnes' body were sufficient to let him survive a plunge into an icy river at the bottom of a fall that should have otherwise killed him. According to the Smithsonian Institution, Barnes was already an excellent athlete, and like Steve Rogers, he too has early levels of superhuman conditioning due to his enhanced physiology. While his cybernetic left arm gives him an obvious boost in strength, Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, is incredibly strong even without it. His natural superhuman abilities put him on par with Captain America, and he is capable of delivering powerful strikes with his right arm and legs that can send enemies flying, crash them through walls, or knock them out cold, even when he's holding back. In fact, Bucky is strong enough to seriously hurt other enhanced individuals like Steve Rogers using just his natural strength. He even held his own against Black Panther while T'Challa was wearing his Vibranium suit and was able to keep him at bay during their fight. Apart from that, Bucky also had no trouble taking on the Flag Smashers, who had also been enhanced by the Super Soldier Serum. During the chase, he knocked one down with a flying punch, staggered another with a solid hit, and later at the GRC camp, sent one flying through the air with a kick, knocked another one out with a couple of hits, and finally slammed a third to the ground with ease. Later, Bucky's strength and cybernetic arm allowed him to go toe-to-toe with John Walker, who by then was also a super soldier and already a highly trained fighter. He was able to match Walker's blows, hold him in place even as he tried to attack with the shield, and restrain him long enough for Sam to take the shield away. He even managed to stun Walker with a punch and hold him down so Sam could land the final blow. That said, Bucky isn't invincible. He was eventually overpowered by Nebula, who proved strong enough to rip his cybernetic arm off. How long can Bucky last in a fight? But then Bucky's body is far tougher than that of a regular person, as his bones and muscles are denser and more resilient as compared to a human being, because of the artificial enhancements he received over the years. This toughness helped him survive his fall from a great height into the Danube River in the Swiss Alps. The fall was so fatal that his teammates thought it had killed him, but because of the super soldier serum coursing through him, Bucky barely managed to pull through, and later with further experiments conducted by Arnim Zola made him even stronger by fortifying his physique to an extent that now Bucky could jump from high places and land hard without getting hurt. In fact, he once leapt off a building and landed on a car, crushing the roof and shattering the windows, but walked away without a scratch. He has also taken hits from powerful enemies, including Iron Man's punches and repulsor blasts, and still kept fighting. Apart from that, Bucky's enhanced agility also surpasses that of normal human capabilities, including highly trained Olympic gold medalists. We've seen Barnes leap higher and further than normal humans, like the time he leapt onto the doors of a speeding truck during the chase of the Flag Smashers, as well as quickly jumping on top of mid-sized cars in a single bound while running. Barnes was also able to perform complicated acrobatic flips in order to avoid gunfire and to quickly dive into cover. So that definitely proves his mettle. But that's not all. Barnes also produces far fewer fatigue toxins during physical activity than the musculature of an ordinary human, thus allowing him to exert himself at peak capacity for hours before tiring. This is why he could endure the Clash of the Avengers and at the later showdown at the Hydra research base without showing signs of fatigue. Barnes, alongside Sam Wilson, was also able to participate in the ambush at the Latvian GRC resettlement camp against the Flag Smashers, then go on to fight John Walker, all of whom had also been enhanced by the super soldier serum, and by the end of it all, he was still strong enough to walk away from the fight. Now, just how cool is that? How fast is the Winter Soldier? So Bucky Barnes moves with incredible speed, which goes well beyond what a peak human could achieve and definitely edges into superhuman territory. As you know, he's fast enough to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Black Panther and Captain America, while even managing to stay ahead of them with just a slight head start and match their speed in close combat. In fact, during one encounter, the Winter Soldier moved so quickly that he vanished from T'Challa's view and made it to a rooftop in mere seconds. He was also more than capable of keeping up with the enhanced Flag Smashers. Not only did he match their speed in a fight, but he often outpaced them by taking one down before they could react and even intercepted another just in time to stop them from hitting Sam Wilson. At one point, Bucky even outran the Flag Smashers to protect both Wilson and John Walker. Speaking of Walker, after he took the Super Soldier Serum, Bucky still managed to hold his own against him. Rather, he efficiently dodged Walker's attacks, stepped in before he could kill Wilson, and landed solid hits even when Walker was using his shield to defend himself. In another moment of raw speed and power, Bucky also managed to catch up to a moving truck during the Flag Smasher's chase, showing just how far his physical abilities go. Not just that, along with his other abilities, Bucky's reflexes had also been enhanced as they became responsive enough to catch Captain America's shield being thrown at him at a high velocity, as well as other projectiles such as enemy grenades, knives, and poles. After one point, Barnes could also dodge gunfire from Falcon Steer SPPs and leap on top of a moving car accelerating towards him with pinpoint accuracy. Is Bucky Barnes immortal? No, the Winter Soldier is not immortal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While he has been cryogenically frozen between missions, which has definitely slowed down his aging, he is still capable of growing old and dying. Basically, his longevity is primarily due to being frozen and not any inherent immortality. As a result of the super soldier serum in his body, Barnes ages at a much slower rate than normal humans, and he also shares this particular trait with his fellow super soldiers Steve Rogers and Isaiah Bradley. Barnes' lifespan has been artificially extended by being frozen in a cryostasis chamber, which allowed Hydra to weaponize him for many generations by keeping him frozen in between missions. In fact, Bucky is currently over 100 years old, even though he retains the appearance of an adult man in his prime. But you should also know that Bucky Barnes' body is able to heal with extraordinary speed and efficiency, at a rate well beyond that of a regular human being, meaning that if he suffered any lethal injuries that would kill anyone else, Bucky would still have a chance at life. However, he certainly cannot regenerate any missing body parts, and I think we all know that by now. Bucky's rapid healing ability also prevents intoxication by alcohol and may be one of the factors that allowed him to survive his fall in the Swiss Alps. It was also because of his quick regenerative healing that Bucky could recover from the injuries he received during his combat with Iron Man and healed in a matter of days without bruising or scarring. Not just that, in the span of a single day, Bucky was fit and fine from the vicious wounds he suffered from fighting John Walker. Some might say that if Bucky did not constantly end up fighting so many battles in the MCU, he would easily pull through another century without having the need to be cryogenically frozen. Well guys, that's all for this video. I know a lot of you would mention how I did not discuss Bucky's role as a top-tier assassin, or his martial arts skills, or even his skills with a knife or a gun. But if you're a Marvel enthusiast, I'm talking about both MCU and the Marvel comics. Bucky's iconic abilities should be general knowledge to you. With that being said, are you guys equally excited to see Bucky's adventures in Thunderbolts? Let us know about your thoughts and theories in the comment box below.